The cat's ready.
Yep, cat
She's
is
just that way.
ready.
What's the link? Let's
She's
at least get it tweeted out.
Sitting on the back of your chair.
No, she's sitting on my table today. Oh, you
Oh,
coming?
you got it.
You heard your name? Come on. Come on.
Get on the chair.
Come on. Come attack the wires. Yes, I cleaned everything off the desk so you couldn't destroy it. I put like the mail on the desk. I come home, it's all over the ground. I'm like, come on, cat.
Yeah. I had a cat. He went up on top of the, I don't know, somewhere pretty high where we had like a bunch of little trinkets.
Yeah.
And he just walked up.
Oh, you tap it. Yep.
Just one by one.
Did he wait for you to watch? Because my
Yeah,
cat
I swear
actually
he
wait
was
for me
like-
to watch.
He was like,
If I don't
staring right
look,
at me
she'll
the whole
stop.
time. Yeah.
And then when I start looking, she'll be like,
Yeah, that's right. I'm doing this. What are you gonna do about it?
you looking at me? You evil.
All right, are we ready?
All right, let's go.
20-second time. Ready?
3, 2, 1, go. Hello, and welcome to the Static Void Podcast. I'm Jess Chadwick,
I'm Todd Slater.
And I'm Chris Gomez.
and we are your hosts. We're recording this on the evening of December 13th, 2016. And since we're coming up to the end of the year, in this episode, we're just going to take a look back at what's happened this year and discuss how relevant .NET really is, like both now and going forward. Or really when and where .NET might still be relevant, and where maybe not so much. So this is a conversation that the three of us have been having for a while now, right? A couple months. This isn't really necessarily an end of the year thing, but a lot has happened this year, right? With .NET Core being released, and .NET Core being released for multiple platforms, right?
Yeah.
And so
Studio now released for multiple platforms.
Visual
Yeah.
Studio released for multiple platforms. A lot of cool stuff has happened in the Microsoft space, and at least my initial reaction to this is, yeah, well, I'm writing Angular, right? I'm writing Angular, and I'm calling web APIs on the back end. That may or may not be written in ASP.NET, and frankly, doesn't even really matter if they are. And so now this is very much, my world right now is very much web driven, but this is this concept that we keep coming back to of just how relevant is .NET still today. So I know, Todd, you have not lost any love for .NET. You are still as adamant as ever in how awesome it is and how relevant it is. Right?
I'm still mixing the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
So I think a good place to start with this conversation is maybe necessarily Microsoft's or .NET relevance isn't changing, but maybe the web is just getting so much bigger and bigger and bigger. Any one thing is just a small part of this whole big ecosystem, right? You talked about Angular. What are there? Like 10 different UI frameworks we could use today. Any one of them aren't necessarily going to be the end-all be-all, right? So
yeah,
when we talk about the server side, the need of the server has become very much componentized around, hey, it's just getting data from the server, right? I don't have to have this big server framework to do everything.
the server side of the web equation.
Yeah. All I need is something to give me some JSON data, and off I'm going. It may not even be anything I own, right? I know we've talked recently at our user groups about like serverless technology, right?
Yeah.
So the server has its role, but being focused more and more on the web, the question becomes, is the bread and butter of .NET still something that's something we have to live in day to day? And for me, it is, and it's not. I don't think it's going to go anytime soon.
Well, so is that the way you just stated that it's something that you have to live in? I think that your opinion is a little more is a little stronger than that, right? You actually still enjoy it, and you think it is the best, right?
Yeah, I think it's. Whenever I looked at other stacks, I feel like they're trying to play catch up for what Microsoft has provided with Visual Studio and their server technology and .NET, and whether it be from server things like Web API, WCF to MVC or anything. I just feel like that world is very mature, and I feel like I can do anything. You give me any kind of problem, I can make the solution work on the Microsoft stack. Where I look at some of the other stacks, I feel like there's so much. Which product you have to figure out the 20 different things you need. Where in .NET, they're just there.
Well, that's the motto, right? That's the .NET Foundation motto. Any developer, any platform, any application. And I would argue that's why they decided to build .NET Core and get off of just being a Windows framework and be a Mac framework, be a Linux framework. And I don't think the vision is fully realized, but certainly one of the pitches that I'm hearing time and again is, hey, you like C#? Let's say you love C#. Like, let's think about someone like Miguel de Icaza, who loves C# or has been a C# steward with Mono forever. And now you could almost argue that his dream is the one that has been realized, because with ASP.NET and with ASP.NET Core, you can build your web applications, or you can go to Xamarin and build your mobile applications, or you can stay with the .NET framework for Windows and build desktop applications. I feel like part of that is to say, yeah, you know, you love this platform. We've got an answer for you for everything. And that was kind of the Microsoft way, though, right? That was a Microsoft shop would sit or, wait, and what's going to come out of Redmond to solve my problem? It's been that way for a very long time. What is Microsoft going to do to get us into the internet even?
I think to a certain extent, there's been a stigma around that too, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm in an enterprise, and so there's kind of that fight between Java and .NET, and you talk to the Java folks, and it's almost like they look down in disdain on the .NET developers, on the quote Microsoft developers, the Microsoft stack, right?
Yep.
And I think a lot of it comes back to their opinion of Microsoft itself, right?
Yes.
And how evil it is and how it wants to kill open source. And that was the Microsoft of 10 years ago.
That's a different world now.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that discussion because I think that speaks for itself, right? That Microsoft is the top contributor on GitHub right now, right? Or the Microsoft employees. So I think we can move right past that. But even to your point, Chris, of the Microsoft developer mindset is, I'm just going to sit around and wait until Microsoft solves it for me, because that is what the Microsoft stack represents and continues to represent. I think that's what both of you are saying, right? Is that it's just there for you, it's ready to go. And I'm going to sit around and wait for Microsoft to give me a solution, even if that solution is not that great. Like, what was it called? ASP.NET Ajax?
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, I'd argue
update panel.
I'd argue
and ASP.NET Ajax.
That was all
equally bad. But update panel being an atrocity, right?
I'd argue a little bit about. I think what you're saying about waiting around is part of the misconception. You don't have to wait around. The platform you do many, many, many things. You're not restricted by anything.
No, but you're waiting around for Microsoft to solve that problem for you, right? So update panel is a perfect example.
Well, C# itself, .NET itself, was that not at least partially a response to Java?
Some of it was,
we don't know for sure. I guess theoretically someone could say, hold on, get your tinfoil hat off.
Yes.
They were probably working on that in Redmond, but really, were they?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, COM had a set of problems. They knew they needed to move somewhere. Java just gave them sort of
Java was successful.
Kicking the pants to move forward.
Right. Let's do something similar, and then obviously we'll iterate on it. And
yeah. Well, and so I want to set the record perfectly clear. I love C#. I even love .NET. Right. The whole context of this conversation is the relevance of .NET now and going forward, which I do question, but I love it. Right. Today, if I want to, on the server, if I want to create let's even say a web API backend, just a simple web API backend, not a quote app, right? Not a UI, not anything. Just I need a UI or a service to return some data. I'm going to go right to .NET. I'm going to probably go today. I'll probably go to ASP.NET Core, but honestly, it doesn't even matter. I don't care at this point because Core doesn't really give me that much of a differentiation, a value add right now over the classic ASP.NET. And so I'm going to go there. I'm going to write it just because I know it. I know I can knock it out. I know how to optimize it. I know how to use it. I know how to bend it to my will.
Yeah,
right?
it's your bread and butter.
Yeah, it's my bread and butter. It's been there for 15, 16 years for me now. And so I do still love it. And so it's kind of with a heavy heart where I'm saying, well, maybe it's not so relevant anymore. And strictly in the web world. And I think that's what a lot of this conversation is going to revolve around, is in that web context. Because I think we can probably all just kind of agree that, yes, there's a ton of back-end stuff. The back-end doesn't really change. It doesn't really mature. It doesn't really move very quickly. And so, WCF, if it's there in a lot of places, and I believe it is, it's probably going to be there to stay for a long time. Obviously, legacy applications are going to be there to stay, right? And so I don't think we're questioning the relevance in that regard. I think .NET developers are going to be able to find a job for
for the
dozens of
foreseeable
years to
future.
come.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
There'll be COBOL programmers. There'll be 50
Yeah.
years from now people looking for .NET developers.
Right. So I think
Well,
we're really more
it's
talking
not even
about
gotten to that state
greenfield
yet.
stuff.
Like
Yeah,
we're not even at that state where like, oh, RPG, great, you can work on the last AS400s.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can put that in the
And we shouldn't
basement.
really joke about that, because if you have that skill,
Oh, you're high
you're
demand.
in demand.
Yeah.
So, it's sometimes the mistake we make in this industry is thinking being on the cutting edge is the place to be, but that's where the crowd is. And if you have the right niche specialty, well, you're the one,
Yeah.
the
Survivor.
cleaner, the survivor who can come in and fix things.
Yeah.
My perspective on this has come from the explosion of the world's most popular, loved, and hated language all at the same time is JavaScript, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just become how everything can be done with JavaScript, not just building your in-browser client stuff. You want to do stuff on the back end. We've got Node.js now, and I know that a lot of times it's easy to make fun of the JavaScript ecosystem because new stuff comes out all the time. It's moving really fast, NPM and LeftPad. But if you boil it down, you can actually kind of count on one hand everything you really need. You probably only really need to learn a little about Express, and maybe if you don't even need the heaviness of Express because you're just doing a web API, then Restify. Okay, that's not too hard. I know of those two stacks. On the front end, Angular, maybe React. That's pretty good. And now, so I'm building web applications now. Maybe I'm building a spa with some kind of web API-ish backend. Could be using Express, could be using Restify. But then I want to go make a mobile app. Okay, I can still stay in JavaScript. I have some React knowledge. There's React Native. I have some Angular knowledge. There's Ionic. If I want to work in the cloud, all of the clouds support Node as a first-class language in ish environment, right? AWS Lambda for serverless operations, there's Node. Azure Functions, there's Node. I mean, Heroku, there's Node. Like, everyone has got JavaScript support. And I think to Microsoft's credit, they recognized that they weren't going to be able to build a successful Azure cloud platform and just live in .NET and say, we're the .NET cloud platform. So they're like, all comers, because what we want you to buy is compute.
Yeah.
That's what we want you to buy.
Right.
Buy compute.
Yep.
And
that's worked, right? Because I mean, now
Yes,
Amazon
it has
and
worked.
Google are also making sure .NET's also
Yes.
first class on their platform. So it's
right. Lambda just got .NET Core, C# as a first-class citizen. So that strategy's working. The strategy's work. I think .NET Core is becoming a first-class citizen on Google Compute Engine, right?
Yeah, there was something I came across the other day about Google supporting .NET. I didn't dig into details of its core, just core, but
yeah. So it's funny because on the one hand, I can begin down the path of I'm going to advise somebody who says to me, I want to become a software developer. This is a very common first question. What language do you think I should learn? And I often will say, hey, tackle JavaScript because you can do anything with it. But then, and something that's happened in the last year, which maybe this is the bright spot, this is now me, I'm going to flip around and argue the other side, is Microsoft is succeeding at saying, yes, but you can do anything with .NET. So would it be bad advice for me to say someone, you know what, maybe think about C# because you can use it everywhere.
Everywhere except the browser, right? I mean, it's
Yes.
Let's not go
That's the
there.
one.
That's
That's
a
the
huge
one-
subject.
You're right. That's the one place.
I think that is one of
We
the
were allowed to at one point, not that long ago.
yeah,
Silverlight. Moving
But you
on.
can't. But you can't get the plugin everywhere, right? You can never get it on an iPhone. You'll never get it on.
Right. Well, there's also been some hacks for
Yeah.
compiling C# into JavaScript and all that stuff, but I'm not talking about those. And I don't want to bring this into a JavaScript versus .NET
No,
debate
it's
or
not meant to
C#
be.
debate.
It's
It's
just
not
saying,
meant to
like,
be. But I
that's-
think, but when we're talking about the relevance of .NET and how it's being threatened, especially in the web space, that is incredibly relevant, right? The prominence
That's
of JavaScript.
the predominant threat.
Yeah. And I also find it very interesting, very intriguing how it's kind of a self-fulfilling and a self-perpetuating thing where, JavaScript is ubiquitous. And so I have let's say a new hardware platform or whatever. I got a new IoT device platform that I'm building. Yeah. What language should I use? Oh, well, JavaScript's everywhere. Let's use JavaScript, right? So now it's even more ubiquitous, and it's just it's just going and it's just growing, right? And to your point, what language should I learn? Yeah, you learn JavaScript. Then you'll not only be able to write server-side web apps, client-side web apps, you'll also be able to write IoT and code on my Pebble smartwatch.
You can get away with building your first mobile app in JavaScript. You can get away with it.
Yeah.
I know the native mobile developers will have very good points about why your app will suck. But for my first app, and when you consider what a lot of these apps are, like maybe you're building a retail store app or you're essentially the front end for a major newspaper.
Yeah,
these are practically websites anyways.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
and I think too, part of the advantage of JavaScript is all I need is a browser, right? I can fire up Chrome and start writing JavaScript.
Right.
It's very easy for me to get started. Where something like a C# or Java, I'm going to need some kind of powerful IDE or code editor to move beyond that.
I don't know. I think with .NET Core, now Visual Studio Code is now an incredibly viable option.
Yes,
right?
But if you think back to when we learned programming, we probably learned BASIC first, right? It was just very easy to get started and start writing. I didn't necessarily need to spend a week learning constructs. And start writing code and see what happens. With the web, with JavaScript, you have that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know. So it sounds like you're arguing for JavaScript now. So
it's arguing threat, right?
.NET is no longer relevant.
No. That's not what I said. You learn
the language of the browser is JavaScript. We can't, and no one's been able to unseat it.
In a world as being a single person, you need to be a polyglot programmer.
Well, that's probably the best point.
Yes. So I think you're right. You learn JavaScript first, and then you should look into learning whether it's a C or a Java. You should broaden your perspective. So a couple quick points as we were talking about JavaScript being ambiguous. I think it's kind of funny that the reason why they put Java, which was supposed to be this ambiguous language we were all supposed to use for all these different devices, was just a one-off thing. Like, we'll call this JavaScript so it sounds relevant. When JavaScript has now basically become what Java was always trying to become.
Oh, absolutely. No,
the second comment, irony there. The second comment is, and to the best of my knowledge, it's still a thing. I can write .NET with JavaScript. It was one of the big things they had back in. You had VB,
that JScript.net,
JScript.
Yeah.
No one had ever used it, but I think it's just kind of funny that now we're trying to build server-side stuff with JavaScript, and it was really there day one.
Yeah, that JScript.net. But it was Microsoft was trying to walk this line of it's not JavaScript, but it sort of is, and
that was more of a legal line, though.
Yeah,
sure,
bringing it back.
It absolutely was.
If you say, if we're all just kind of saying JavaScript wins, if on the browser, if only just because it's just natively supported in the browser, so it's a no-brainer, and C# doesn't even run in the browser. Going back to the topic, how is .NET still relevant? Why is .NET still relevant in the web space? So you said we're in a polyglot world. You need to know many languages right now.
Yes.
I don't. It's just simply not true. I don't need to know. I can be successful enough just knowing JavaScript. And I can even use TypeScript to get the benefit of static typing that I get with C# on both the server and the client. And so I don't need to live in the polyglot world. I can just learn JavaScript. So how is .NET still relevant
this opens up a whole bigger can of worms, right? Then we start comparing Node to .NET, the platform, right?
Sure.
Because as I just stated, with .NET, I can use a lot of different languages to write .NET programming. With Node, I'm in JavaScript, and that's all I get. And I'm living in that world, which is nowhere near as mature as the Microsoft stack is, right?
Well,
it can't be because the Microsoft stack has been around for 30 some years.
And when it comes to writing .NET on the server, okay, you can be pretty successful. I know that this is not the hot new thing. Let's say you decide to embrace ASP.NET Core and MVC,
Yeah.
and use Razor to make some templates, and kind of go anywhere from 90 to 100% server side. You can be pretty successful, and you haven't written a line of JavaScript yet.
Or if you very little, or the bare minimum to do simple things.
The bare minimum to do some client-side tricks. But let's say you don't even want to do that. And you're building some kind of simple forms over data thing. Is that acceptable? Would that be acceptable? Or are we as developers, and I don't mean the three of us, I mean like the whole community, you know, when you look at the blog posts and the cutting edge, they're just SPA. And hey, that's awesome. I mean, client side SPA is good stuff. It's awesome stuff. It's great user experiences. You can take advantage of features in the browser. But aren't there still websites that just don't need it?
Well, there certainly is set use cases, right? Even in even a big, massive application where you might want a SPA, you still need a contact form or something, or help, right? Where you don't necessarily want to build it as this massive client-side application. I think you need to apply both. You can't be living in a single world of I want to totally focus on client side or totally focus on server side. You need to make the right mix.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. But I mean, I hate to belabor the point, but I can build so what you're really talking about are sites that are probably closer or should be closer to a static site, closer to the
content-driven site, more content-driven.
Content-driven, right. Not these applications per se, but more of a content-driven site. Absolutely. So I myself have done that recently in the past year. We had a content-driven site. I did file a new ASP.NET MVC project, and there we go, right? And I did all my pages in Razor, and then I threw a little JavaScript to spice things up on the client, and everything is great, right? And then in that site, I coincidentally also had a little mini SPA, but that was just one page, one section, right? So yes, it's still legitimate, but again, that is also the reason I went right to that is because I'm so comfortable with it, not because it was the best option. And I'm not saying that the Node option is the best option either. I'm not.
You could do the same thing in Node, though.
I'm just saying you can do the same thing in Node. You can build static sites in Node.
You could use Pug, and there's templates.
Right. There are templating engines, new engines like Razor in there. So, you know.
Well, I mean, let's touch that real quick, right? Isn't some of what the Microsoft world, well, at least what I think is a positive, is I don't need to go find out what libraries are there. It's part of my framework. It's built into Visual Studio, right? If I got to go find Pug, which I never heard of until you mentioned it, I have to go find out what Pug is. There are 30 other things. Jade.
But I agree with you.
Jade either.
So for us, okay, well, for you who you know, you don't live in that space, and I don't expect you to, that's fine. But if you spend just a little bit of time in the space, you learn about these things, that you just come across them the same way a .NET developer is going to learn about ASP.NET MVC and learn about, you know, what used to be called ASP.NET Web API and all of those things. And I guess kind of the reason I brought it up, Jess, was just to say that I think there can still be some relevance in a server-side framework like MVC, and it's just not getting the promotion and play because the sexy thing to do is to use Angular 2 with TypeScript and Visual Studio Code and head back to a web API.
I agree it's sexy. I agree it's hot and new, and we as devs just kind of gravitate toward the new stuff because it's fun and it's interesting. But when all of that is said and done in 5 years or however long it takes for things to not be new, my point is that it's still a legitimate option, right? That doesn't make it any less legitimate. It is hot, it is new, and that's why people are gravitating towards it.
It's not a fad, so you're right. It's certainly not a fad.
It is right. It's not hot because it's new.
Right.
It's hot because it works and it's new.
Right. It's very scalable.
Yeah. So here's one of my takes on the Node thing. At least one of the personal reasons why I just learned enough to do what I need to do. Is it the new Ruby, right? Outside of the Microsoft stack, you had Java. Java went so far, then people started adopting Ruby. They can only take that so far. So some of them tried PHP. That didn't go very far. Now we got Node. Is Node just going to, in a couple of years, they'll move on to something else? Where in the Microsoft stack, we keep moving along, doing what we need to do, That's
The anchor
again,
is the browser. The anchor
Well-
is that JavaScript is the only language of the browser
the
today.
anchor is the language. The anchor
Right.
is
So
JavaScript.
that's the anchor, and it means that Node is relevant purely just because of that.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
Node won't go away just because there's this compelling thing to say, I as a developer, I know JavaScript, I'm pretty good at it. And this is a false promise, by the way. I know JavaScript, I'm pretty good at it, so therefore I can do anything. Okay, great. Are you a good browser JavaScript developer, or are you a good Node
that's a whole other
JavaScript
can of worms we could
developer?
talk about.
And they
And just
are two
because you
different
know-
things.
Right, just because you exactly yes, I completely agree with you. Just because you know how to do DOM development with JavaScript doesn't mean you know how to do Node development. Two totally different things, but at least you don't have to learn the
Yes. Don't have to learn a
yes.
new language.
You don't have to-
well. Forget about the language, like the area of the language. You know, the syntax of the language really not that complex, but it's the intricacies of it. It's the concepts of a prototype. You know, prototype
Yeah.
inheritance and things like that, and closures and all of those things. It's how you use the language.
But didn't like I use Java as an example. Java had both, right? We can do it in client or server side, and it has a critical mass. But a lot of people eventually got away from Java because it
What are you
was
talking
hard.
about? Applets?
The applets were terrible.
Applets or even client
Applets
side
were a
stuff.
plugin.
Yes,
Applets
they're
were a
plugin.
plugin. They weren't in
It
the
was
browser.
Silverlight before there was Silverlight.
But you could also
Yes.
build. You could have built Java apps.
It's not the same, but it's not the same at all because it's a plugin. It's something that you had to install. More importantly, it's something that your OS had to support, right?
It was meant to. I mean,
yeah,
that was
that's
the
true.
plan. That was the grand plan, though, and it didn't work out.
I'm using it more of just from a language point of view. You
Yeah.
had the ability to write the language on both client and server, and it only went so far.
Okay.
There was
well,
always a limitation.
how about Flex? Flex, Flash,
Right.
Again,
these
it only
things.
went so far.
Air.
yeah.
So
Those are that's still plugins, much lighter weight plugins, cross platform plugins, but still not really going there. I think going back to your point, Todd, about you brought up Ruby. I think Ruby on Rails is a more direct competitor to .NET, just in terms of kind of features and what it offers, what it brings to the table, and it's, to your point, is a little bit more fair comparison because it doesn't have that client side that client side part of it. But they tried, right, with CoffeeScript. That's exactly what CoffeeScript was supposed to be, something that
Right. Well, there's
looked
more than
very
that.
much like Ruby, but it generated JavaScript and
I mean,
Like we
part of my
have,
point was
we have
that
other things like that. Like we have Elm, right? Which
Yeah.
is compiling to JavaScript. Does .NET,
closures. There's lots of different things.
would
to
it
do that.
close the loop for .NET to have that, or is that just a
Uh,
quagmire
I think it's
to try and get there?
Does Elm work? I don't know. I mean, we should probably look into that. We should have another.
I mean, we have TypeScript, though, right? In many ways, TypeScript is sort of that same thing, right?
Well, that's the interesting thing, right? Is TypeScript like the C# gateway?
Yes.
Well, I actually come to the camp. Eventually, I think TypeScript and C# are going to be very similar.
And I don't think
They
there's
already are.
necessarily.
What I meant is,
I
you
don't
may
think
end up
there's a
using
grand
one.
plan.
You might use TypeScript, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden become C# code, or maybe you write C# code, and all of a sudden become
Yeah.
TypeScript.
And I honestly
feel like
don't
they're merging
believe that
together at some point.
Anders. I don't believe Anders goes into the conference room and they pull the shades and his TypeScript team and he says, "This is my plan to gateway the
Pretty much
JavaScript world
use
to
Delphi.
C#." I just honestly think he loves this idea of transpiling to JavaScript in a type safe, and not just I think C has multiple goals. The type safe stuff, the type safety is huge, but also the ability to bring future JavaScript features forward now.
Yeah.
In a slightly different way than Babel does it, because obviously Babel, the Babel transpiler project does the similar goal, but he's doing it a different way. He wants to make it a first-class language feature, and then by the way, I transpile wherever you need me.
Yeah.
I don't honestly believe that there's some like secret plan, but in some respects, Jess loves TypeScript because it gets him back to types and
Which is one of the main things that I love about
which is
C#,
closer to
right?
.NET. Yeah.
Right. So let's bring it back again. How is .NET relevant in this space? Why is it still relevant? And how is it going to remain relevant?
Well, it
does
sounds
it
like
bring
in
to
some
the
ways it still is, right? Because we're in an interesting. I've heard. What have we? How many years now do you think Scott Hanselman's mantra has been "Use what makes you happy"?
Mm-hmm.
And at first, I
More
thought
record.
it was possibly a way to avoid the question. how is your platform still relevant? But as I've become exposed to even other things like say Elixir or F Sharp that are interesting to me, I go, maybe it is about using what makes you happy. Maybe that's okay. And maybe
Use the
that
right
is
tool
what
for
will
the
keep
job.
these platforms move forward. Well,
Well,
is
man,
the right tool for the job .NET versus like something that's supposed to be really fast, like the Phoenix framework on Elixir or Falcon on Python, which is supposed to be speedy, fast? I mean, I haven't used these things, but they're supposed to be awesome.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd have to compare them, really.
Yeah, well, right. And
I'm
who
a
has the
skeptic when it comes
time?
to this. Well, see, I'm always a skeptic when it comes to those things.
But the thing about it is okay. So you have a career and a ton of experience in Microsoft and .NET, and it's getting the job done, not just for you, but for your employer and your customers.
Yes.
If someone else can get the job done, and I'll just pick something using like Falcon, that doesn't make them a bad person. They're getting the job done and they're happy.
Yeah. Now
Maybe that's the world.
Maybe the question is though, is that going to last?
Well,
right?
sure.
I know .NET's not going to go anywhere, right? Its relevance may change or its point of view may change. What I want to think is kind of interesting is I think Microsoft's relevance has increased because they are adopting these other things into their platform or into their ecosystem, right? Them and Google are now working on Angular 2 and TypeScript. And who's driving the future versions of JavaScript? Those two, right? They have a bigger relevance. They're now integrating with Linux. Linux is now integrating with Microsoft. The paradigm has shifted, I think. So even if .NET never goes away, right, in 5 years now, right, no one's writing .NET server code. Doesn't mean Microsoft goes away. It may even be Microsoft moving us in that direction. Someday we'll download Windows 11 and it'll be Linux based.
Well,
right?
so
It's
that's
already
the
being built
thing
into the platform.
Is there's no question that Microsoft recognized probably back in the Windows 8 timeframe, we're not going to be able to charge for this thing much longer.
Yeah.
Like that day is ending. Except that I think hopefully they realized it first before, because I think things like .NET Core beg the question of why do I need Windows anymore? Why don't I just go make my data center all Linux? And then I think the naive observation from that is like, wow, this is going to kill Windows licensing. But I feel like Microsoft's taking one step back to take multiple steps forward, which is by embracing the rest of the world. Whatever wins, we're going to be involved.
Yeah. And a lot of places, when you talk this on the server side, once you pick something, you very rarely change.
Yeah, you're not ready to move anyway.
They're thinking like, well, maybe we get people to start using our stuff, and then all of a sudden, look, it runs a little bit better on Windows. Now you want our stuff. It's kind of the whole drug thing.
When SQL Server for Linux, is RTM, and let's say we find out that it runs better on Linux, I wonder if Microsoft cares. Because it's not a free product.
Somebody will care, but as a whole, they probably won't care.
It's not and see, SQL Server, in terms of licensing, that is a whole different order of magnitude than Windows. So, oh well, right? So okay, oh sure, yeah, run it on the free Linux, and it's $25,000 per core, please, or whatever the pricing actually is.
So I'm amazed. I'm shocked that we've been talking in the web space for so long, and neither of you brought up Xamarin. Well,
and that's the thing, right? So Xamarin, I think, in the Microsoft world, Xamarin's, I think, has like if we were to like do a poll of favorability rating, like they do for politicians and governments and whatever, I think it would have a very high favorability rating.
Oh yeah.
I think Microsoft developers think highly of Xamarin, even someone like me who hasn't used it too much.
So I've only used it sparingly, but I work for a company where we build products for it and we're investing heavily in it because we believe it's a huge piece of the Microsoft story moving forward.
Why?
Why is it? Because the need to be able to write code once and be able to run your app across different platforms. That need exists. Right? And now they've introduced this idea of technically Mac is now a client of this too. Right? I can build an application today where I don't have to care what you're running as your desktop or mobile solution. I'm focusing on my solution, the thing I'm trying to solve.
Yeah, but that's a little naive, right? I mean, you have to, especially in the mobile space, you end up doing those last little touches that make it feel like a native experience that are specific to each platform that you're targeting. Right?
But again,
Now, don't you do that no matter what, though?
Yeah,
Let's say
do
you
that
go
no matter
native.
what.
You go
some
native
people do. Not everybody
Java,
does.
native Java on Android or native Swift on iOS. You're still got differences.
Yeah.
Or you're going React Native and you're saying, but we're gonna use our web technologies and we're gonna go React Native. Okay, but now hold on, last mile. It's gotta feel like an Android app and it's gotta feel like an iOS app. And it's gotta feel like a Windows Phone app.
Well, no,
kidding.
Or Windows app.
React Native is a framework in itself. It just happens to use JavaScript, and it kind of
Sure.
looks like HTML, but it is not. It is not a web.
It's a whole other
technology.
thing.
It's a whole other thing.
I mean, it's kind of like
Okay,
Electron, right? Electron
let's say like
sort
Cordova,
of a web
right?
technology, but it's
Cordova, right.
Oh, and Electron to build cross-platform desktop apps, right? So
That's where I'm really looking, but that's desktop. That's not mobile, right?
but it's once again sticking with essentially your web technologies, mostly JavaScript, and you choose Electron, and it's going to run on your Mac, it's going to run on Linux, it's going to run on Windows,
and it's native-ish. It's native enough, right? So
good enough.
Yeah, I mean, I was a huge proponent of HTML, JavaScript, web applications, mobile applications, even before it was actually legitimate to have that opinion, because they did actually suck more. But even in those times when I was kind of demonstrably wrong in a lot of scenarios, there were still plenty of mainstream scenarios where I'm effectively just bringing a content-driven app. It's not a static content app. It's not simply just a web page bringing it to a phone or an app. It's a little more involved in that. But I don't care about graphical, I don't care about the graphical performance and that really deep immersive stuff. I just need to create a better experience, something that doesn't feel like a web page, something that feels more and looks more like a mobile
Or you want the
application.
convenience of someone being able to download it from the store.
That is downloadable, discoverable on the store, and has an icon on the mobile.
There are
Well,
benefits of being in the ecosystem of things.
Yes,
and
yes.
progressive web apps are on the way, right?
Well, and now there's that, right? So I'm talking over 5 years ago, right? When it was just, in many cases was just really slow and painful. But even at that point, my point is, even at that point, that HTML5 application was fine for many cases as well. But now that platform has gotten so good that it is a legitimate contender to Xamarin. And I'm still, when the crux of this conversation is, what is the relevance of .NET? What is the relevance of Xamarin? I'm not saying it's useless. I'm not saying, some people are like flipping out right now, right? There are Xamarin fanboys think that this is amazing. So I'm not attacking Xamarin. I'm attacking that native application versus HTML.
Because we can always fall back to web technologies and use something like Cordova.
Yeah.
And then if you don't want to use Cordova in maybe it's going to be a year, because you've got the Microsoft folks saying, we are going to make the Windows Store recognize your progressive web app and put it in the store for you.
Yes. Which I'm not surprised at all.
I don't actually know the plans on Android and iOS store, but I don't think Microsoft's alone with that model.
I can see Google at least doing it.
Right. And if Google and Microsoft both do it, that begins to put the pressure on the iOS side. Like, I know they want to
two sides of the pyramid are pushing down. The third side eventually has to at least acknowledge it exists.
To say, well, wait a second, why couldn't I go to some newspaper.com, and this is wonderful on my Android phone. When I went to that website, because somebody told me, oh, hey, go to philly.com and check out what's on the front page. And then there's this wonderful button now that says, add me to your phone. And to the user, that's way better than even the store experience.
Yes. Right. Yep. It's discoverable. I don't have to go searching for stuff.
Add this to my phone, click, and boom, it's on my page. It's something I can put it on any folder I want. And next thing you know, people aren't even going to the stores anymore.
Yeah. Okay. So
why it's not.
So let me address your Xamarin thing real quick.
Why .NET?
So I think when you talk about Xamarin, it's a different audience today. Their initial audience is the desktop developer, who may or may never have learned JavaScript, right? May or may have never invested time in learning Objective-C or Java. Now they have a story to be able to build their things across all these different platforms.
Okay, so we're in.
And they never bothered to learn WPF either.
Now they're stuck learning XAML.
In a very unfair way, to paraphrase, you're saying this framework caters to people who don't care to learn new stuff.
or they never thought the web was relevant for what they're doing, right? If you're building a WinForm and WPF app, web technology may not be relevant to you, or it's the priority of it's much lower.
So
Right.
mobile is not equal to web.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean, I
fine,
would think
right.
I would think that these are all different ecosystems, right?
Even
You have
though
a mobile ecosystem, you have a desktop ecosystem, and you have a web ecosystem. I know plenty of people who love .NET. They love XAML. They don't love JavaScript, right? I used to be in that camp. I hated JavaScript until one day I sit down, I'm like, let me learn the language of JavaScript, not just using jQuery, but actually learn the language. It's a very interesting language. I have problems with the way we use it in the browser, but the language itself is actually not that hard. There's like 20 things you need to know. But most people they don't love the idea of trying to debug in a browser or trying to use whatever tooling they have available for debugging. When you go right into Visual Studio, put a breakpoint, I'm in my code. And it does work in the Xamarin world, right? As long as you have the right devices. And there's a few things you need to make it work with Macs. But basically, I can step through my code and then see the running thing on the phone, right? I get that great experience.
That is a great experience. Yeah, absolutely.
And for someone who's very focused on desktop, experiences matter a little more than the ambiguity of the web. Now, are there people that kind of jump back and forth? I consider myself in that camp. If tomorrow someone came to me and say, hey, let's go build an iOS app. Okay, what's the make sense is deciding which platform makes sense.
Yeah.
I haven't done Objective-C. I've done Cordova. I've done a little bit of Xamarin. Hell, I've beat Windows Phone apps.
Yeah.
I built two more than 99% of the people in the internet world.
Yeah, well, and to be clear, I'm not dissing
Yeah.
Xamarin, right? It might sound like I'm dissing Xamarin. I'm just definitely, for me personally,
No.
I haven't ever taken the time to learn Xamarin. Just because I know C# and .NET doesn't mean that
you
I
have
know
to learn.
Xamarin.
Yeah,
It's
you have to go
it's a
learn.
new thing that I'd have to learn. And for 100% of my use cases, and what my assertion is 80 plus, 90 plus % of the general use cases, I would say that HTML5 is good enough, right? And
But you know that stuff, right? If you didn't know
because
that
I know
stuff,
I'm going to use it. Yeah.
yeah. If all you knew was XAML, it's more natural to move towards it. That's what I said today. I think that is. I think eventually Microsoft has a story they can tell, and I think that story is really more about core, right? What if on an Android device, I'll use Android as an example, what if they could run pure core code, not Xamarin code?
Yeah.
Right.
You could build a pure native Android running application with .NET Core.
Right.
To me, that is interesting.
What
Whether
if
they eventually
what
get
if the
there or not,
target was like a jar?
or even though they like, no, we're not going to support Java. We're going to do .NET Core with TypeScript or something. Who the hell knows what they're going to do?
Yeah.
It can run on Linux, right? Android phones are a
Sure.
variation of
Okay.
Linux. So to me, that's more compelling to me personally,
Okay. I
just
hear
from a
what you're saying.
techie side of things,
Yeah.
more than necessarily a practical thing. Because while doing Xamarin makes sense for a lot of things, it's kind of a, trying to figure out the right word. I want to call it a crutch. It's a layer abstraction, right?
Yeah.
So I have to live through whatever layers of abstraction I have.
You're
allowed to do.
talking about, rather than building a native app by cross-compiling to that platform, it's truly native. You're
Yes.
writing Xamarin, and it's running as effectively Xamarin on the target device.
The minute that Scott Hanselman went in his
That's
talk
awesome.
and was on
Yeah.
a Linux box and goes, look at this cool thing we're working on someday. I've just got my code from GitHub. I've done the command line saying, compile to native. It's not a running native Linux thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we
My
still
brain
do.
said, that could run on Android.
Well,
to me,
and
that is
now-
compelling.
Windows runs on ARM, so now
Yeah. Right.
the Windows devices are.
So what if
back
someday
into-
you walk onto your Android device and there's this little thing called the Windows Store sitting there that lets you
Yeah.
download any Android app or vice versa?
Yeah, it's amazing, and I think Jeff Fritz mentioned this when he was on the show too. It's amazing the cyclical nature of client server.
Yeah,
Like, we go like full server for a while, and then we're kind of like drifting back down to the client part of this, and the client is the mobile device, and the mobile devices are becoming powerful enough to actually run these apps.
I think we're eventually going to reach a world where you have to kind of know both, or enough of both.
Sure.
You
Well, that's
can't
where I'm
just be-
coming from, right? Yeah. When you're talking about these developers, you're kind of making up this class or this group of developers who don't really know web, or they're not comfortable. They just don't want to deal with it, and they'd rather do the native experience, and they don't see mobile applications
being
as
viable.
web applications. That it kind of takes me aback, right, when you say that. Like I see it one as the same, because you're not gonna. mobile apps almost by definition are connected, right? Like
yes, except for games. But
even games, they have leaderboards and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But yes, even games, but sometimes, many times games
from
can
an
just be
architecture
local,
point of
they don't have
view,
to
which
be-
is really where I focus more of my life, day-to-day life, is yes, it's a connected application, it's a distributed application. But there are cases where people feel like native experiences are faster and better. Whether that's more opinion than anything else, I don't know. I don't live in that world enough to have that opinion. When the people have come to me for mobile applications, we always talk about, do you really need native, right? Is mobile web or Cordova or something else good enough? And 80% of the time, it was good enough, right? Because maintainability of the code and getting to market was more important than it goes 1% faster on 1% of the phones.
Yeah, sure. No, good points.
So being a .NET developer, are our skills going to be relevant?
Right.
I'm going to champion it this way. I think we are more relevant, but not necessarily the way we've been. I think someday the vision of Java, .NET will achieve it.
Well,
Running
so we've spent 40 minutes talking about the web domain. So
yeah,
clearly it seems to be questionable, or rather, I think, Chris, you probably said it best. Well, you were quoting someone else, but use the framework that suits you. Bring your own tools, use whatever you like, and all of them are equal contenders. And if you're comfortable with ASP.NET, cool. Try out ASP.NET Core. It's a good direction to go in. You don't have to. It seems like it's not really a clear winner either way, right? There's no clear, obvious choice on the server.
And you should be marginalized because that's all you know, because you're not using Node. Marginalized.
Yeah.
You're not cool and hip. No, if Node makes sense for you, use it. If .NET makes sense for you, you can do the same things.
Right.
It's more of a personal choice and your team's choice than necessarily. There's no limitation.
Right. So that's the web domain. So moving out of the web domain, moving back down onto what? We got server, right?
Yeah.
And we've got desktop, I guess. Is that fair to say?
And
what about cloud?
Games.
Cloud and data?
I'm when I say server, I kind of mean cloud. Stuff that's running, stuff basically without any UI is effectively what I'm saying. So, but there's also games. Do we need to talk about that platform? .NET in the gaming realm. I know, Chris, this is really near and dear to your heart. Is it becoming more relevant there, or?
I think yes and no.
It's Unity, right? Unity
with Unity, C# has become probably the most used language in Unity. That's probably true.
But that's not necessarily .NET, right? You're just using
it is. So the way it's been explained to me is that it's a fork of Mono.
Okay.
For platforms other than Windows. That's the way it's been explained to me, is that it's a fork of a Mono that's basically like a .NET 2.0. So you miss, if you're a big time .NET developer, you miss out on a lot of what's happened in the language since.
I guess you get generics.
You get generics, but there's a lot you don't get, But however, you are allowed to, if you're building for Windows, you're allowed to move up. And so there's that. It's probably fair to say that that's the language that's kind of won over, say, their sort of JavaScript-y thing, which is not JavaScript. And the reason why it's not is because they had to modify it. Since everything ends up going back to Mono, they modified JavaScript to be strongly typed.
There's meaning Unity. So Unity offered two languages
or whatever.
Right.
Instead of saying Unity script, they put into the GUI JavaScript, but it's
TypeScript.
Well, it's different,
but not good.
So certainly in Unity, I think it's fair to say that C# has become a major player, and then there's work underway, from what it sounds like, to try and help those folks unify with .NET Core.
Which makes sense,
right? But now the Unity folks themselves are talking about native. They're talking about saying, we'll compile down to native too, using like LLVM and stuff like that.
Because Unity was used for a lot of mobile games, right? At least that's some of the things I've heard. It was pretty popular as a way to build mobile games.
It runs everywhere, right? And when new platforms come out, they support it. So like the Nintendo Switch is coming out soon. It's going to work in Unity.
So this is my point: is I think the skill of .NET, maybe it's the skill of C# more than .NET. I think it will continue to evolve, maybe away from the bread and butter we've done for a long time of building apps.
And when it comes to both mobile and games, is it fair to say Microsoft lucked into it because they were not investing in those spaces? Miguel does with Xamarin.
Yeah.
Unity folks do with games, and whoa, what do you know? C#'s huge in these places. So
it's being successful.
That could be by design, though. That could be by design. Like Microsoft has always been something about we want third-party partners to come and grow the world.
And when they get critical mass, we'll purchase them or help
maybe
them.
We'll buy them, right? Yeah, sure. Makes you wonder, right? Is Unity? I don't know. I have no idea.
I mean, having worked for a partner for Microsoft for a long time, yes, they are the most friendly tech company for partners, more than the other ones.
There is no shortage of ways to make games.
Yeah.
Or
web, right? When we talk about web stuff. So.
In fact, the game world is even more diverse. You want to dive in C++.
Yeah.
Still there. Now you want a little bit of help with an engine, maybe the Unreal Engine, maybe the CryEngine. You can still live in C++, although the Unreal folks are working very, very hard to say, hey, we want to unlock the power of the engine with you doing more scripting and less heavy lifting. And that's all a friendliness bid to try and get the game dev startups to say we can be much more productive and we'll use this engine, and they're thinking about the royalty path. So
yeah.
But you as the developer at home, you want to get started with lightweight engines that are less than $200 or even free. Or you can go back to the web and use a engine like Phaser, which is great.
Which you can get pretty far.
JavaScript-based engine.
And we're
free.
back to JavaScript versus that.
And JavaScript wins, and it runs on Cordova.
So I think Jess is just playing both sides because really he's a TypeScript fan.
Well, I kind of am too.
So when TypeScript takes over the world,
quite clearly squarely in the JavaScript camp. It has nothing to do
with someday when TypeScript runs natively in the browser and we don't need to write JavaScript, we write TypeScript.
I'm running both sides too, and the reason why is because it just feels strange to me to be working on the front end of a web app and then say, oh, I'm going to go work on the RESTful API now, so let me switch languages,
switch context, switch.
See, that doesn't bother me.
The reality is it doesn't bother me either because I know the platform. The .NET platform is a piece of cake to me. But when I kind of step outside myself and say, this is what we're telling developers to do,
and we've got here. 15, 20 plus years under our belts of learning this stuff.
Our perspective is,
of course it is. Yeah. Right? But exactly. What about the new folks coming in? Now they have to learn 2 stacks in order to be productive.
Sure.
Kind of makes you think. But again, we are kind of already went over that. You are the node stack, the server side of the JavaScript world is a stack in itself. You are having to learn that too, but at least you're not having to learn the new language and the new paradigm. So going back to, you guys had mentioned, let's bring it back to server now, the final kind of category as I'm chunking it up. So server meaning anything without a UI, anything running on the server. So any big data plays, any cloud stuff, anything running on B2B services, things like that. How relevant is .NET today? But I guess more importantly, has the relevance really significantly changed at all this year or in the past couple of years? Or does .NET Core really change a whole lot there?
Well, let's extend it a notch, because I think if you're a .NET developer with some experience, your data store with SQL Server, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
A good chunk of it, yep. Maybe Oracle here and there.
Is that beginning to slip towards some document and NoSQL type databases? And what does that mean for an
I haven't seen
core? Okay. You're not seeing it. Okay.
No, I've thought about certain applications like, something having a file type cloud-based storage may make sense for some things we're doing, but no.
And then you go back to SQL Server.
Or for some work with customers, it's just something they know. Like the database is the holy grail, right? That's a whole other world. When you're a database guy, that's your world. All this other stuff is just, hey, you guys out there, you're worrying about JavaScript or C#. I'm just writing my SQL and my store procs.
It's mature, right? So I think SQL Server specifically, the product, that's part of, quote, the Microsoft stack. Although I've seen plenty of places where they are Microsoft stack and then they work with Oracle or something, right, for various reasons.
Or IBM
But
stuff.
I think just relational databases are just mature. They are there. They're just de facto like, I know this. I get the concepts. It does what I need it to do. It's not going anywhere, right? It might not be the most effective or most efficient way to solve this problem, but damn it, I know it. It's easy. I can knock it out. It's a hammer. It's a hammer, and everything's in
Well,
there.
and now here's the thing, right? So one of the criticisms of SQL Server is it's much better at scaling up than scaling out.
Yeah.
So that makes it not really a contender for the cloud. However, if you talk about the great majority of applications, probably over the 95% plus range, you can do everything else in a scale out fashion, go big iron on your one SQL Server, and you're probably good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe you have some clustering and some other things for follower and some things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's not sexy. It's not we're in the cloud and we're scaled out and we're sharding. It's not any of that.
But if you put the right
probably
caching in
work.
place and the right architecture in place to
You
make
can
things
probably
asynchronous and-
like Stack Overflow was talking, weren't they on stage? Well, not on stage, in the video at Connect, saying we run, I believe they said, third or fourth largest website in the world. We're a SQL Server monster, and we are on one SQL Server.
And there's several scales.
They
right?
said we're on
there's
one
no
SQL Server, and our CPU utilization is like single digits or something.
Yeah, I mean,
because we know how to optimize the hell out of it because it's pure, right?
And
Like
they're like, oh, by the way, we really do have a second SQL Server, but that's just because
that's
we're
just
not
there in case
stupid and we need redundancy. Yeah.
don't mind the second SQL Server.
But it's just redundancy. It's just redundancy. They, Joel Spolsky is up there saying, we are massive iron SQL Server. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And so all you people out there sharding, again, brilliant stuff, perfect for cloud. You're super smart people. I salute you, but that's Stack Overflow, and we're not in that use case.
Yeah. So right. So our use case is the day-to-day, the majority of the world is, and I know phrases like that are just overly generic, almost by definition, but
in the corporate world,
world, well, I don't even know what that means either. The corporate world, the enterprise, but
the line of business world.
Yeah, B2B, back-end processes, those kind of things, or even you guys threw in, big data, cloud processing. Obviously, cloud is huge. It's a huge kind of revolutionary thing that's happening over the last decade or so. But other than that, and let's say WCF, like, has anything really been revolutionary in the server side, excluding web, right? Excluding web-facing stuff.
It depends on your point of view, and whether it's a good technology or ambiguous technology, like what is SharePoint, right? SharePoint is exploded all over the place. Everyone has SharePoint.
That's not a framework or a language, though. I mean, that's a platform.
Well, it's a platform.
I don't count that. I don't.
You said server, so I mean, I know that from a technology point of view, I've always thought that BizTalk is something that we grossly underestimated the power of. The whole orchestration model.
Sure, and I don't mean to dismiss that either, but I would really consider that more of a platform too. I mean, when I bring up WCF, that's a framework that I'm building custom solutions on, right? So just focusing in that area and focusing again on the topic of the show, the relevance of .NET. I think that, I guess what I'm trying to get to the long way is that obviously the .NET framework, 1.0, when it came out, it was a pretty good way to develop applications. I think it really took off when WCF came along.
Yeah, the 3.5 stack.
It's a really, really powerful, truly powerful paradigm, right? It brings with it a new programming model of, like, you just write classes with methods and they become services. I'm oversimplifying it, but that's the drive, right? But even encourages using interfaces and contracts, and
even with Web API today, right? It's still the basic same paradigm. I've created a class, I attribute the stuff, it works, right? It's achieving the output is REST based instead of but the concept is still the same.
I bring it up because I would consider WCF to be so when we're talking about the web world, right? We're talking about Microsoft Web API, or now it's built into ASP.NET MVC, ASP.NET Core MVC, sorry.
Yes.
It's built in now. It's built into MVC. We've already kind of gone over that, right? So you say MVC versus a node solution for your web API. There's really not a whole lot of differentiators of like, yes, this is the clear winner.
Right.
I would say with WCF, there are a lot of features about it that you could make the argument that like, this is really better than a lot of the other alternatives out there.
Yes, if you had to have that total ability to plug in different types of protocols.
Today.
Oh yeah, it's different protocols.
You're talking past tense, but still today, right?
No, if you need to build something where you want to use UDP and you want to have different servers and have all kind of discovery and stuff, there's a pretty good argument that is, from a custom solution point of view, that's a good way to go.
Yeah,
particularly on the .NET world.
Well, even
the Java world,
any of that stuff.
Yeah,
even
the
if
Java
you're just
world,
exposing SOAP services via HTTP, right? Like, it's an incredibly good model, just from a developer model, from exposing your service to consuming your service. They've got the tooling of point to that WSDL, generate the proxy, and just call it, right? And you get that .NET class that you can just consume right there, and it's incredibly productive. Yeah. And I don't think there's a lot that really challenges that. So I guess my question there, my assertion with all of this is that definitely the relevance in that world, especially with WCF, .NET has not gone down at all. In fact, it's going strong, may even have climbed. I don't know why I'm saying that it's climbed. I'm not basing that on anything, but I think it's as relevant as ever. I guess I'm saying it's climbed with the addition of the ability to run ASP.NET Core on these things. Now, WCF is not available in ASP.NET Core, right? No. Right. So I'm kind of making counter arguments.
I think what was it? The client is open source. Yeah.
They've made the client.
Yeah.
But I think servers still run on Windows.
They will move. They will have a story there.
They'll have a story, right?
There's still those needs where that fits.
Right.
So
I guess the point I'm making is certainly not today. It's not relevant today. But I think we have the capacity to be relevant when the WCF model, if not literally the framework as it is, but the model is available in a cross-platform space, and now you can host WCF services in Linux. It's pretty cool.
And I think that's maybe more where we come, right? We as a community, because .NET is now open source, I'm sure some very interesting entrepreneurial people could build a WCF-like experience on Core and get something pretty good to work.
We just need Javal Lowy to come and do it for us.
I mean, we were joking, right? He would be the type of person, right? He would be someone who wanted that experience, or Don Box or somebody, right?
Yeah.
I think that more is the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, we didn't need that. REST API, Web API is good enough for most of what people need. Yeah. But no, people are gonna, once Core gets enough critical mass, you'll see things like that, or a similar paradigm, right? Queuing stuff, or the ability to do UDP communication, or TCP, pure binary serialization. It'll come.
Yeah. So making a Windows service a job that's always running and watching stuff. Yeah.
Well, what, we're really close to that now with things like Azure Functions.
Sure.
Or AWS Lambda, where you say, I know it's not a traditional Windows service, but it's always available, and it's a little bit of code.
Yeah. And we've talked with some people about Service Fabric. I think Service Fabric is in many ways a lot of that first cut of things.
Yeah. So, what we keep coming back to is this the final thesis, or that the single best decision that saved .NET's relevancy for 2017 and beyond is .NET Core?
I've been thinking a lot about this lately, and I think that it will have no immediate impact in regards to people being all excited and saying, "Oh yes, finally cross-platform .NET," and now I'm going to jump in and going to do that right now. There are a lot of people jumping onto .NET Core right now. Well, I don't know what a lot is, but you hear these stories of people jumping onto it now. But I think that's largely driven by either the impressive performance numbers, or it's just the new hot thing and it's lighter weight and all of those benefits that they didn't
early in the wave of .NET Core.
Yeah, they're taking advantage of those benefits, and they're seeing those benefits, but they didn't really need them, right? They were happy on ASP.NET, and they didn't need something else. I think that the real value in ASP.NET Core is going to be coming in the future, where after it's been kind of established and new people come into the game, new developers come in and they say, hey, what should I choose to implement my server side application? And .NET ASP.NET Core is sitting there, and it's an incredibly viable option with a strongly typed language and a strong, mature community and everything, and say, hey, there you go, right?
I have been part of conversations with developers who they're asking about what .NET Core can do today, because they kind of want to get away from some old Windows services that they might have written, let's just say the .NET maybe 1120 timeframe. And they're thinking to themselves, this is finally my way out. This is finally my way to get away from, we stood up a Windows server just to run a service. Why isn't this a small commodity Linux box doing one thing?
You mean because everything else runs on Linux?
No, because I think for some developers, it's a path towards being a little bit more polyglot. Like, we don't have to be totally dependent on one platform, which I guess you could argue you don't have to be that on Windows.
Right, you don't. Right, and that's why I'm trying to kind of decipher what you're saying, because you said we just stood up this Windows box so we could run this service, implying that we had no other reason to stand that up.
It's just because it's right. Maybe it's an old legacy box, and trying to cut down on licensing or whatever.
It's not new development. It's something you've had around for a while.
Yeah,
and now,
to be honest, what makes my example a little unfair is it's probably like tying together talking with different people in different scenarios and saying, like, well, this is kind of the commonality.
Yeah.
Like, there's this ton of interest. People ask me all the time, especially when they come and saw in 2016, when they saw my talk on running .NET Core everywhere other than Windows and Visual Studio. The next thing they wanted to know is, well, just how much can I port? Just how much can I port?
And it's just not.
The answer is like, well, it's really limited right now. Are you using app domains? Well, then no.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of people out there who are like, well, no, it's mainly an app that talks to the SQL server. Well, you're probably not that far away.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say that I have been, especially in the container space, the Docker space, I've been incredibly jealous of the innovation that's been going on there and felt left behind as a, quote, Windows stack developer, right? Because Windows is clearly just kind of an afterthought there, and they're clearly playing catch up. And yes, we're going to have true Windows containers soon. But even then, it's just going to be like, hey, we got a Windows container, and we can participate in this ecosystem too. Like, why? Why would I run Windows to run my .NET apps and my Windows apps? Why don't we, if we're investing in new stuff, right? That's clearly a good thing for existing applications, and you don't have to rewrite. But for the new world, and we got ASP.NET Core, and it runs on Linux, why do I care about Windows? Let's just leverage this.
Right.
And Microsoft recognized that, right? I mean, they didn't do this in a vacuum. They made it very clear they were going on this path, and took 2 or 3 years to get there, and they got the feedback, right?
Well, is it to keep them and .NET developers relevant? Like, that's why I kind of say, was that the best long-term decision, even though there's a short-term?
My comment
I don't even think it's sacrificing products. I mean, I don't think it's really sacrificing Windows Server.
On the cutting edge world, the web world, in the news, yes. The bread and butter of their 80% of their developers, no, they're behind the firewall. It's less relevant to them.
Okay. That's fair enough.
So the bottom line is, Node sucks. Don't go away. .NET will live forever, and someday I will rebuild Silverlight.
Okay, last question. Is it C# forever, or are we finally going to start talking about F# in 2017?
Never. F# is, F# is a nice little sandbox to figure out what to put in the next version of C#.
Oh, jeez.
C# rules everything.
And on that note.
Yes, on that note.
You listener, what do you think? How relevant do you expect .NET to be in the coming few years? Are you divesting in other technologies like TypeScript, JavaScript, Node? Are you actually doubling down in the .NET space and investing in things like Xamarin?
F#.
F#, yeah. We'd love to know. please leave a comment on the website, staticvoidpodcast.com, or send an email to comments@staticvoidpodcast.com. And hey, guess what? I happen to have a limited edition Static Void podcast mug right here in my hand. Only one of 4 in existence. The 3 of us each have one, and you can have the 4th one. If you send us an idea for the show that we actually use, I will mail it right to you. That'll be your prize. We are not rich enough, as some other shows, to actually give a mug away each episode, because these things are expensive.
But if you give us good ideas,
But
we'll create our
that
audience.
is how valuable.
more
I
mugs
got
in the
1
future.
mug to give away. Yes. So please let us know. We love to know what you want to hear about. Todd, Chris, thanks for the chat.
Yes.
Thank you.
Awesome as always.
And thank you, listener, for spending the time with us. We hope that you enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the Static Void Podcast. Nice. Nice.
A little long, but I think
A
we're
little
okay.
long. A little
Contribute to
long.
open source. No, it wasn't that bad. And you know what's funny is
I think we could have talked for another hour.
I agree that Jess probably recognized we were beginning to go in a circle though.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we went on a few tangents, like in the gaming aspect.
That wasn't bad though.
I think it's all
thinking
relevant.
about it, because I do
Bad.
forget that Unity. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Unity.
Let me ask that. I'm not saying the gaming was a tangent. I'm just saying, like, after we spent a couple minutes in gaming, and then we started talking about other stuff in the gaming world, but that wasn't relevant. Wasn't specific. I'm not saying it wasn't relevant. It wasn't specific to .NET. Let me put it this way: at the show being an hour and 10 minutes, is it worth cutting those couple of minutes out just to get closer to under an hour?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it continues to
leave it
drive
as
the
is?
point home to use what you like, right?
Sure. Right. So you guys are good with basically leaving it as it is?
Yeah, I think just some
No,
normal
no,
editing, the normal stuff. I think
Where? But I've stopped doing a lot of the normal stuff.
Then
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I mean, I
Just
think
hopefully that my audio is good, because the last show when I listened to it in headphones, I caught a lot of myself.
It was painful.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
it was
so
mostly
I
my
noticed
audio.
when we had the false start last week and started to record, I could hear it just in the Google Hangout. I could hear the noise, and I didn't hear that tonight. So I think you're fine. All right. Awesome. So
have you created the
I
folder?
guess we are going to say bye-bye. Thanks for watching. 1 viewer. I would love
Yes.
to know who you are. We had 3
Leave a
viewers.
comment
We had 3 viewers. Where's
Did we?
it?
Nice.
Comment where? On the
it's a video. They can comment on the channel, on the video.
channel. Well, that would be nice. Thank
should
you,
have been-
listener.
We should have been watching.
I didn't know where to watch. I tried bringing it up. I tried Twitter just to see if people were talking to us. Yeah, we really need to get better at this, two-way.
Well, so the thing I don't know how to do is I don't know how in the ASP.NET Community stand-up the chat feature works, and like they can look at the chat, and I don't know how that works.
I know, we got to figure this out. Welcome to 3 guys trying to figure out Google Hangouts.
Trying to get to lower third. That's all I want for 2017. It's my
I want
third.
to go see
comment?
this. I want to go see this comment.
Where's his comment?
No, I'm not saying there's a comment. I'm saying on the YouTube channel,
Oh,
They-
I'm not saying
they can
there's a
comment on the video.
so
How
like,
you
comment, and
work?
subscribe is what you're saying. No, definitely comment there on the show, and
I mean,
and
that's
yeah,
the
I
easiest
think
way to
we
give us
should
feedback.
probably-
You see the video, and then
We should probably engage on a good comment.
I mean, we're
and talk
live
about
right
it.
now, right? It says live right now.
Yeah, but the one viewer is probably Jess at this point.
It was, and I just disconnected. Yeah, I was 2.
What? See, it still says 1 viewer.
And I bet you Russ, or buddy Russ.
Hey,
We
Aaron.
have 11 subscribers.
I think no, Aaron's been asleep since 9 o'clock. What are you talking about?
Yeah, we got to
I
get your
bet you it's Russ.
those
Russ,
old-
if it's you,
those old
solidarity,
Jess
man.
Chadwick viewers have to get over too.
So, Jess, you should be able to go onto this channel's YouTube page and see who did the likes, who are the 11 subscribers.
Yeah.
So I just made the second like, but I can't see who did the first one. But if they have, you have to be logged into YouTube, I believe, to do that. So
Sure,
you
yeah.
should be able to see that.
All right, cool. Well, I am going to go to sleep right now.
You thought you're playing Titanfall.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
come
go
on.
see if my friends are playing Titanfall, and if they are, I will probably play.
You creating a folder for us?
Oh, well, Chris usually does that.
Chris, you creating a folder for us?
Yeah,
To
I'm
be
working on it.
specific, I usually go to do it, and then Chris has already done it.
By the way, we're still live. If you want.
I know. This is all behind the scenes.
Okay, just making sure you.
Viewers are
Never
free to
gonna
drop at
disconnect.
any time. we've already ended the show, and now it's on you if you want to stick around.
We can have echo back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were saying 2017 maybe the year of guests, so we have to start booking them.
Yeah.
And we should double up.
Oh,
Get a
Karthik.
guest. Get a
Karthik.
guest who wants to come on the podcast and also speak at the user group. Solve my problems for me.
My buddy Karthik is the one watching on the
There
channel.
you go.
Nice.
That's cool.
That is very cool. I appreciate that.
That earned at least a live shout out, if certainly not a mug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And go earn a .NET challenge coin.
Yes. No. So that has to be one of our next shows, contributing to open source, both a retrospective and a call to action. I want to do that. Both of those things. I want to commit to open source and be a part of driving open source contributions. I honestly think the idea of contributing to an open source project, any open source project, is overwhelming to people who haven't done any of that, right?
Yeah.
Let's say I've been developing for 20 years. I got chops. I'm confident about my ability to code. I am not confident to go into some existing community and say, hey guys, how can I help? Right?
Yeah, right. Totally. I
and
mean,
I
I'm
feel
not.
like
I'm not either.
No, right. I wasn't either about 2 months ago, right? And I just kind of brute forced my way into it. I still don't know if I'm doing it right. I'm probably not, but I'm pushing it, and you know, it is rewarding and it's cool, and I just want to talk about it. I want to have a conversation about it. And that's one of those conversations where I think I probably prefer not having a guest. I don't want to say, here's the expert at open source and you tell us, because like that in itself is overwhelming. I think it's, you know, we got day jobs. This isn't what we do. And then we go home at night and we look for an open source project to contribute 2 or 3 commits to, right? We're not like
Titanfall at home or other video games.
oh yeah, what am I doing still talking to you guys? I got to go play Titanfall.
Yeah,
I'm
you
still
gotta
waiting for the
Titanfall.
drive, the folder to come up here.
Yeah.
Isn't it up?
All right.
I
Is it
didn't
up?
see it.
Wait,
12,
what? The folder?
14, 2016.
I didn't see it there. Let me refresh. This damn web application's not automatically refreshing for it.
Of course, it does say 15 gigabytes of 15 gigabytes used for me.
.NET relevance.
Yeah. I think we can probably clean up this stuff. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Karthik, for watching live. Wonderful. All right. Signing off.
See ya.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Where's the button?